Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who do not know, my name is Sephora. I'm a licensed attorney and law school coach. And on today's video, we're going to be talking all about the factors that matter when choosing a law school. And I'm going to differentiate. I'm going to talk about choosing a law school to apply to, right? So this is when you're creating your law school list. This is not at the stage when you have received your acceptances and you're deciding which law school to attend. This is the way before that. This is the rewind 8 months before, okay? And the reason I wanted to make this video is because so many people have been coming to me saying, my friend is at XYZ insert law school here, and they love the community. Okay. Did your friend also tell you that that school puts 30% of their graduates into JD required jobs or jobs that require bar passage? Because that's what matters. Okay. So my point is, you need to know the factors that matter when choosing a law school. You do not want to go to law school and graduate and have no job or have a low chance of landing a job. Okay, so I'm going to tell you those factors. So let's jump right in. The very first factor, if you cannot tell by what I just said, is a law school's employment outcomes. Okay, employment outcomes. What this is, and this is what I always say, you need to have an idea. It doesn't have to be specific. It doesn't have to be like, I'm 100% sure I want to do this, because in fact, once you get to law school, it may change. Trust me. I didn't even know what federal clerkships were when I was applying. And my 1L first semester, I didn't even want to do it. In my 1L second semester, that's when I decided to do it, learned about the benefits, learned about it. And now I've done two, both district and circuit. Okay, so I'm not saying you have to have a concrete, this is what I want to do. Okay, I'm saying it's going to be helpful to have a general idea. And trust me, I wish someone had told me this. Ooh, I'm going to have to make a video on that. Things I wish someone told me when I was applying to law school 9 years ago. Okay, anyway, so someone remind me in the comments. But anyway, so employment outcomes, right? So here, this is where you're thinking, what is it possibly that I want to do on a broad scale, right? So Biglaw, I'm just gonna name a few here. I'm just going to name a few. I'm not going to name all, so don't jump down my throat. Like, that's not all of them. Get rid of it. I know that. I'm naming the ones that are relevant to me and relevant to my clients. As in, these are things that most of my clients are interested in, and because they're interested in it, I wanna help them get there, or because I've already done it. So the first is Biglaw. I generally categorize Biglaw as law firms that employ over 150 attorneys and pay market rate. So right now, as of May 2024, market rate is $225,000 starting. That means when you graduate law school and go into a law firm as a big law firm as a first year associate, you are making $225,000 starting salary. Okay. Employs over 150 attorneys and it pays market rate. That is how I categorize a firm as qualifying as a big law firm. Other people may have different definitions, but that's mine. If you know, or at least you're thinking, hey, I want to do big law, then you are looking at schools that have employment outcomes of placing over half of their class, or at least half of their class, into big law firms, right? So you wouldn't want to put at the top of your list a law school that only puts 10% of their class into big law. Big law is notoriously difficult to get. Majority of attorneys are not in big law firms. That's for a variety of reasons. One of them being it is very difficult to get, but the other being it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of work. And so a lot of people will go for 1 or 2 years and then leave, but obviously people stay because big law firms have partners, right? This is a completely personal decision. If you want to go to big law and get the money, you do that. I'm all for it, okay? If you want to go and get the experience and get the training, big law is very great for that. I am all for it. But all I'm saying is you want to have an idea of what it is you want to do. There's a variety of different practices and types that you can do at big law. Litigation, appellate litigation, corporate, transactional, mergers and acquisitions. Obviously that falls into corporate. Regulatory, like advisory. There's tons of different things you can do when at a big law firm. That you don't need to know that the intricacies of that. What you need to know is, hey, I would like a decent chance of landing a big law job. Great. Okay, so you know that's employment outcome you want to look for when creating your law school list. The second thing, or I guess I'll name a little bit more employment outcomes, right? Federal clerkships. If a school puts a certain percentage of their students into federal clerkships, you can combine that number into Biglaw, because federal clerkships are harder to land than a Biglaw job is. So it is presumed that if a student can land a federal clerkship, they would also be able to land a Biglaw job, meaning you're going to combine those two numbers, and that's going to be the Biglaw percentage. However, doesn't necessarily mean that if you can land a Biglaw job, you can land a federal clerkship. But anyway, so if federal clerkship is what you want to do, I've done two in both the district court and circuit court. Some of the best experiences I've ever had. Got a video coming on that soon, eventually. So if you have an idea or you want to do a federal clerkship, and just so you know, federal clerkships are especially going to need to be on your radar if you want to be a judge in the future, if you want to go into academia. So if you want to be a law professor, federal clerkships are going to need to be on your radar. So looking at schools that put a decent number of their graduates into federal clerkships. Now, I don't think there's any school that places over 30% of their graduates into federal clerkships. So typically here, you're going to want to look between the 5% and 20% range of students getting landed federal clerkships, because that's a good percentage, because there's no one school that puts over 30%. Why? Well, there is only so many judges and so many courts on the federal level. They're very difficult to get. And so the percentages are going to remain low. So that's another thing you can look out for. Of course, there are other jobs that you can look out for. Like I said, I'm not going to sit here and name them all, but you can look at government, you can look at small firms, whatever it may be. But that's the first and most important thing, is looking at these employment outcomes. Can your school give you a good likelihood of landing something that you potentially want to do in the future? The second thing you're going to want to look for is employment score. This is separate from employment outcome. So employment outcome is where I was talking about Biglaw, clerkships, government, whatever, right? Employment score is simply the percentage of students that your school places into jobs that require bar passage, right? So when you graduate law school, you get a JD, that's a Juris Doctor. When you pass the bar 3 months later, then you are officially a licensed attorney, right? So here the number I'm talking about is the percentage of students that a law school puts into jobs that require bar passage, okay? That requires you to be a licensed attorney. This number is so important. You do not want to go to a school that only puts 40% of their graduates into jobs that require bar passage. Why? Because that means 60% of the class is in jobs or are in jobs that don't require bar passage, meaning they didn't need to go to law school. They did not need to go to law school. You should not be going to law school, taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans to risk not getting a job that requires bar passage, or even worse, not getting a job that requires a JD. So that's why this number is so important. And yes, believe it or not, there are predatory law schools out there. Trust me, I have run into plenty of people, talked to plenty of people who are in jobs that either do not require a JD or do not require bar passage, and not by choice. They are not in these jobs by choice, okay? And so if you know you're going to want to go be an attorney, then you're not gonna wanna have these schools. I personally, I don't have my clients put them on their list at all, but you're definitely not going to want to have them at the top of your list. That is for sure. Okay. Number 3, geography. This one is also another good one. This is also why it's number 3. It's in the top, is because if you are saying to yourself, there's a specific place that you want to practice, then you should factor that into the law schools you're choosing to apply to, right? When you're in law school, you should be networking. I say it all the time. Networking can get you indoors when your grades cannot. You cannot guarantee your grades, but you can guarantee your network. Okay. So especially if you are not at a tippy top school, and I'm just going to categorize that for the purposes of this video as a T20 or T25, T20 or higher. If you're not at a T20 or higher, then geography should really come into play in your law school selection. Like, say, for example, 100% without a doubt, you want to practice in Florida, law schools in Florida should be on your list. Say you want to practice maybe in Florida, Georgia, Texas, law schools in Florida, Georgia, Texas should be on your list, especially if they're outside of that T20. right? Again, why? Because even if your grades can't do the necessary work for you, if you're in those locations, you can network and get yourself still a good paying job while you are in those locations, while you're in those schools. Now, does that mean you can't go to a school in Texas and land a job in Georgia? Absolutely not. That's not what it means. I'm just saying, if you know there's one specific place where you would like to practice, you would do yourself good to apply to some law schools in that area. And if it ends up being a law school that's worth going to based on the factors I've just given you, then hey, why not, right? So again, and I'll just give you another example, right? I went to Georgetown. Georgetown was my number one. Georgetown law was always my number one. I was born and raised in the DMV, and I went to Georgetown and listen, I was top of my class, and I was still networking. I was networking before I knew I was going to be top of my class, because I was networking my first year in law school. I got all of my big law firm interviews my first year in law school before my grades came out. Okay. And it is because of that networking. And that was before COVID, because I was in, my first year of law school before COVID. So I was meeting these people in person because I was in DC, where I wanted to be. Okay. So again, I think geography is just another really important consideration, especially if you're thinking about federal clerkships in the future. I noticed that some judges, at least some that I've talked to, and based on my experience and others' experience, they like to hire people, if you meet all the other qualifications, such as grades and such, they like to hire people with local connections, or who at least have some sort of desire to practice within the area. So that's definitely something you should consider. For example, I know a lot of my friends, they end up getting clerkships where they're from. So just for the purpose of this video, I have a friend from, I'm going to change the state, but I have a friend from North Dakota, and he got a clerkship in North Dakota, where he's from, right? And so that's just another example of what I mean by, make sure you factor in geography to your law school considerations. The fourth and final factor that I will touch on for this video is the opportunities that your school gives you. And most law schools do this, so I don't think I have to go too into depth with it. And I'm going to categorize a couple of things here. But for the first type of opportunity I'm talking about is, I guess like interest groups is a good way to put it, because like Bolsa, LOSA, SALSA, MOSA, whatever, so like Bolsa, Black Law Students Association, LOSA, Latin American Law Students Association, SALSA, I think that's South Asian Law Students Association, MOSA, all those different things, right? For me, at least, in applying to law school, it was important that I went to a law school that had a significant or a high presence of Black law students. And so for me, that was going to help add to the community piece of me attending law school. It's going to help to bring me into the law school and to help me feel more welcome at the law school, and, also give me a space for me to be myself, but also to succeed. And I think that's the most important piece, is to succeed in law school. So like, for example, our Bolsa had an outline bank. It had its own networking events. It had, it brought in like people to do resume review, career event, like just like everything, right? And so obviously I didn't know that they were going to have that, but I'm telling you now that that's why it's beneficial, if you want it, to consider those things when you're applying. And so that's why I'm categorizing those interest groups, because of course law school is stressful, you're going to be busy, all that stuff. And so it's going to be nice when you have things to help you make it easier. And so that's the fourth factor. And the fifth factor I'm going to say is clinics and externships. And most law schools have this now, but clinics, externships, practicums, those are going to be the best opportunities for you to get actual practical experience, because law school is not the best at actually teaching you how to be an attorney. And the place where I most learned how to be an attorney, like I got to do a deposition, I drafted a motion for summary judgment, was in my clinic. And so I think, like I said, I think most law schools have that, but I definitely think that's worth like checking to see if your law school has that. So those are some of the most important factors I think everyone should consider when creating a law school list or choosing a law school to apply to. And if you guys want to get coaching from me, then I would be a lovely desire to help you all. I've helped hundreds of clients get into and succeed in law school. I myself had 2 federal clerkships on both the district and circuit court, and worked at 2 of the top big law firms. And if you are interested in getting that coaching, you can go to toppingthecurve.com or just click the link down in my bio. We do have a workshop coming up, so you can go to toppingthecurve.com/workshop, which you'll also find on my website. Don't forget to follow me on all social media at Topping the Curve, which is my law school coaching page. Thanks guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about the video or have ideas on what I should make a video on next, make sure to leave a comment down below, and I will see you on my next one. Bye.